This goes out to all my married people, men, women, children, people that are in a nice, stable, structured, familial relationship with a nuclear family. You will get hated on and you will get tested by single people. So, anyone that has an alternative lifestyle other than that traditional, again, man, woman, child, marriage, family setup, they will hate on you. Probably more so subtly and indirectly than all up in your face. But it's just going to happen. You see, society has done so many of these things to try to make the, I guess, non traditional household structure, to try to make it, I don't want to say less acceptable, but less of the standard. And there's so many things to try to replace, having a mother, a father, and children set up in place. There's all these different programs and subsidies and welfare programs. And don't get me wrong, they all have their place. They all have their use in society when used appropriately. But when it gets to the point that you're trying to replace dad with a stipend, or you're trying to replace a parental structure with a check, it's not going to work out. But before I go too far on a tangent, I just want to go back to the whole single people thing. So single people will test you. I should add into that people that don't have a linear, straightforward marriage or family relationship. For example, somebody who's dealt with nasty breakups and divorces, or there's some kind of a custody situation going on. If you have a traditional biblical template, just for lack of a better term, just a regular old marriage, people that don't have that will resent you and hate on you. Now, you'll get love and appreciation and respect from those that are in a similar situation, but to those that aren't, you'll get like subtle jabs. And I get this to this day from so-called friends, from family members, from coworkers, from people in your neighborhood, even people that go to church with you will have some problem with you having a low drama or a drama free life where you're just chilling at home and you have joy. Some people will legitimately have a problem with that. More often than not, they'll almost think that you're a weirdo. What? You haven't been divorced? What? You only have one woman in your life? You don't have a mistress? You don't got some tail on the side? What? You know all of your children by name and you live in the same household? Like, people don't want to hear that. It'll rub some people the wrong way. And by the way, I'm not saying that I'm better or worse than anybody in that situation. And I'm also not saying that if you're in that situation, that woe is you and all hope is lost. This is just about a matter of perspective. We're all different. We all got different backgrounds and upbringings and all that kind of stuff. All I'm saying is giving a warning to you, traditionally structured, traditionally married folks, that you will get hated on by single people. And I'll even add on to that, there'll be more subtle resentment than you realize. And I've had it. Like, people that I like to think that I'm cool with or close with, they say, subtle jabs. And they'll say things that imply that, as a husband, that, I'm too busy to have fun, or that I'm whipped, or I'm tied to some kind of like a ball and chain. And I'm sure my wife gets the same kind of thing on her end too. In other words, people will try to portray being married with children as some sort of a burden or some kind of the heavy load. And I look at it as the opposite. It's actually very joyful. I enjoy my life very much the way that it is. my life is, trust me, my life is very minimally free of drama. Like there's very little drama in my life, and when there is, it's because I've let some little thing get in my own head. Because I don't know, maybe I got bored or something like that. But my life is drama free. I don't have to worry about, drugs, alcohol, gambling, adultery, my kids being hooked on, some drugs or something like that. Like all those things, I don't worry about any of that stuff because it just isn't a part of my life. So I have joy. In fact, the only time that I'm not joyful is when I have those little periods of time, call it little midlife crises, where I forget about that. And people that don't have those buffers to keep them in place, meaning they don't have, you got a husband that doesn't have a wife to kind of talk to and relate to kind of keep them grounded, or doesn't have children that reminds them, it reminds the parents who they're working for, what they're working for. When you don't have that structure in place and you're single, maybe unattached, and I don't know the whole story behind that, but when you're in that situation and you have a lot more leeway, your mind can go a lot of ways. And again, what I've noticed a lot in my life is there's sort of a resentment towards people that are just regular old married, And so my life isn't super exciting and exotic from that viewpoint. Okay. But what my life is? My life is it's full of contentment, And I think deep down, now that I think about it, that is what creates resentment, is a lack of contentment and really a lack of seeing contentment in others. Some people will be like, good for you, and give you a round of applause. But there are a lot of people on the flip side that will resent, maybe try to bring you down with them, or have some jealousy. And I've just noticed I usually see that from people that are single or that have been in some sort of, turmoil, been through some sort of turmoil in their personal relationships and are still hanging on to that or harboring feelings towards that. Like I see it all the time, deal with it all the time. The best suggestion I can give for somebody in that state, if you realize you're somebody, talking to single people here, if you're realizing that maybe you're being a little petty or resentful, maybe you haven't found your mate yet, or maybe you were married or in a deep relationship that was going somewhere and somehow it fell through. I don't know what your circumstance is. First and foremost, I pray sympathies upon you. Second, again, I come in peace. I'm not here to say that I'm better than anybody. But what I would suggest that you do is acknowledge the success of those that do have that stability. Pray for their continued well-being and success, because that's the last thing I would pray for anybody. I would never pray for anybody to have a breakup or have a divorce or to have their household fall apart. So when you see somebody that has gotten through and has a measure of success, congratulate them, honor them. In addition to that, if they have a structure that maybe I'd like to have that someday, take some notes, ask them questions. I am open and receptive to any questions that anybody out there might have on how to better structure their marriage or how to deal with their kids, parenting. I mean, that's what the videos I put out are all about, or how to handle your family and how you deal with your family in this crazy world that we're dealing with. But yeah, be willing to ask people for advice, congratulate those that have found success, but don't be that single person that's bitter and passive aggressive and making snide comments on the person that has, for lack of a better term, figured it out. And I'm not saying I have 100% of life figured out, but I would say it's up there in the 90s of percentile to where I feel content with who I am, where my life is going, and what I have around me. And if I wasn't, I'm the kind of person where I would ask or I would seek out information or advice to help me get to that point. So in closing, to all the single people that are walking around with a sense of bitterness and making like little snide comments and, having resentments, knock it off. Seriously, shut your mouth and maybe sit back, Reevaluate what's going on. Reevaluate the comments that you make, the subtleties that you might be trying to fly past the radar. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for advice. But yeah, as far as the snide comments and viewpoints, shut your mouth. Have a blessed day. Peace.